I'm an Elvish translator, and my keyboard is in Elvish, and I use it on a daily basis. These custom Lord of the Rings keycaps and keyboards from Drop are fantastic if you know how to use them. So I guess consider this my comprehensive guide to the keyboards themselves, as well as how to utilize them with Elvish fonts. Reason number one, Drop has made some lamentable marketing mistakes that lead to a lot of confusion. Reason number two, comments like these show a fundamental misunderstanding of the Tengwar written language and how it's mapped onto keyboards. But this is my specialty, so I'm gonna help. That, and I just honestly think that anyone who's going to drop $200+ on a keyboard deserves to know how to use it. The aesthetics are great, don't get me wrong, but for that price, you should learn how to use it too. Let's start with a few frequently asked questions. Number one, what even are these? Long story short, the company Drop has licensed Lord of the Rings in order to release keyboards and keycap sets that display not only the Latin alphabet that we use in English, but also the Elvish Tengwar and the Dwarvish Kirth. As an Elvish specialist, I'm going to focus more on the Tengwar keycaps. Question number two, what are the general options for purchasing these keyboards? Option number one, you can buy a fully fabricated keyboard. The base, the keycaps, everything. Option number two, you can purchase just the keycaps themselves. This is for people who want to build their own custom keyboard. The fully fabricated keyboards are going to run you anywhere from $165 up to $200, and to my knowledge, all of them still have Latin alphabet characters on them. They're tiny, but you can still read A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the keys. If you're buying keycaps only, I believe those start at about $130 per set, and you have a couple different options with them. You can buy keycap sets that still have the Latin alphabet characters on the keys, which is what I would recommend for 99% of people. Or if you are a particularly hardcore nerd like myself, you can buy the hardcore Elvish set of keycaps that have no Latin alphabet on them whatsoever. It is nothing but Tengwar. Question number three, what is the difference between the Tengwar and Sindarin, Quenya, or Black Speech? Tengwar is a writing system. Sindarin, Quenya, and Black Speech are all languages. Just like the Latin alphabet is used for multiple languages, like English, French, Spanish, German, so too can the Tengwar be used as a writing system for various languages. These include Quenya, High Elvish, Sindarin, Grey Elvish, or Black Speech, which was a bastardization of Elvish to be used by the forces of Mordor. The orcs, basically. Because it's a writing system, Tengwar can be used to write out almost any language you want. This is why we use it frequently to transliterate, which means changing writing systems rather than fully translating something. We can transliterate English into Tengwar. It's just using Tengwar to spell things out instead of the Latin alphabet. I know that's a little confusing, so let me demonstrate. Behold the Japanese word baka, written in kanji, which is one of the Japanese writing systems. Can also be written in hiragana as this. Can also be written in the Latin alphabet, B-A-K-A, right? Also in Tengwar, it looks like this. These are all transliterations of the Japanese word into these various writing systems. If we were going to translate it, however, baka equals idiot. See the difference? Please note that writing systems tend to look very different from each other. This is going to become important later on. Question number four, and this is a big one. Is the keyboard mapping for the Latin alphabet the same as for the Tengwar alphabet? No. And not only is it not the same, it couldn't be the same even if we wanted it to be. This is why comments like the one at the beginning of the video, where the commenter mentioned that whoever made the Elvish fonts didn't do their research and just threw the letters wherever they wanted, is fundamentally incorrect. Every writing system tends to handle words a little differently. This is why the Arabic alphabet is different from Cyrillic when it comes to keyboard mapping. They're not going to be the same. Japanese, not going to be the same as the Latin alphabet. Latin alphabet, not going to be the same as the Tengwar alphabet. To reuse my examples here, kanji handles entire words with single complex characters. Hiragana does it by syllable. The Latin alphabet, we have separate letters for each sound. And then in Tengwar, we have characters for the consonants, and then the vowels are diacritics or accent marks on top of that. Differences like these are why you would never expect a Japanese keyboard to type the same way as a Latin alphabet or QWERTY keyboard. It just doesn't work like that. Same thing goes for Tengwar. So with all of this in mind, and 5 minutes into this video, let's get to the actual practical application of this knowledge when using these keycaps from the drop keyboards. I so badly want to apologize, but I did say definitive guide to using these keyboards, so there's a lot of information. Forgive me. So the first thing that I want to note specifically about the drop keyboards is that the ones that are labeled Black Speech and the ones that are labeled Elvish are the exact same. The only difference is that they use a different font for the characters on the keycaps. All of the keycaps are identical, including the ones that are translated into Elvish itself. As an example, the character that's written on the Latin D key here looks like this because it is the Tengwar Anatar font. On my hardcore Elvish keycap set, it looks a little different because this is Tengwar Telkontar. Telkontar is more blocky, whereas Tengwar Anatar is this scripty version that looks like cursive. All the keys that have full words on them like these are actually translated into Neo-Sindarin. So it is translated into Elvish and then written in the Elvish Tengwar writing system. So just as an example, using these three keys on the far column here, this one reads Daro, which means stop. This one is Kebi Am, or page up, and Kebi Dad, or page down. These keys are identical on the Black Speech keyboard as well, because they didn't actually translate anything into Black Speech as a language. This is why the marketing is confusing, and I dislike it, because both the Black Speech and the Elvish keyboards are written in Elvish. It is Elvish written in Tengwar. I hope that makes sense. So while the keys with words on them are fully translated, which I think is a really cool detail, the other keys don't correspond to the same letters on the QWERTY keyboard. Let's explore that in more depth. Now, using our same example as before, baka, we would normally spell that as B-A-K-A on a QWERTY keyboard, which I realize you can't see those characters here, but B-A-K-A is how we would normally type that in English, right? But while this is the letter B on a QWERTY keyboard, this character on the key here is not the Elvish character in the Tengwar for the letter B. That key is actually right here. Why did they do this, I can hear you ask? Why didn't they just use B-A-K-A like you would on a normal keyboard? The answer is diacritics, which I mentioned earlier, but let's rehash it. Tengwar does not work the same way as the Latin alphabet. In Tengwar, we use diacritics or accent marks for all of our vowels and even some consonant sounds. So we have to have a way of putting the vowel A or any other vowel over any consonant in the alphabet. And this becomes a problem. Because, and this is actually a perfect example, the other characters in the alphabet are various different widths. The carrier here is super skinny, versus the one with a stem and a double leaf, the letter B, is thick. It's a thick boy. So the position of the diacritic on this character is slightly different than the position of the same diacritic on this character, because this one is thicker than this one. Because of this, all of our main vowels are actually spread out over 4 different keys each. And those are these accent marks that you see on the top here. We access these by using the Shift key and then pressing one of the characters. Now, which one would you use depends entirely on how far left or how far right you want that diacritic character to show up. So for double-wide characters like these ones, we would want to use this A, which is the furthest to the left. That's the one that goes over these really wide characters. And then if you go down to this A, we would only use this one on top of a super skinny carrier key like this. So ultimately, the reason we don't use the same keyboard mapping for Elvish fonts is because the writing system works completely differently. Every vowel or diacritic needs multiple keys. Therefore, we can't use the QWERTY layout. So the people who developed the various Tengwar fonts had to use a different mapping anyway. So here's where they took their cue. Appendix E in the Return of the King appendices. This shows the actual Tengwar as Tolkien organized them. The chart itself is organized by linguistic type of sounds, so this first row is your voiceless stops, t, p, ch, and k. Over here on the keyboard, t, p, ch, k. That's the layout. So when you really know the Tengwar and how to use them, that keyboard mapping that they chose for these fonts makes perfect sense. It's just different. My name is Chris. I am your Resident Elf-boi here on TikTok. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And for all things Elvish, give me a follow. I swear none of my other videos are this long.